The Johnson family lived in a cozy suburban neighborhood on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. The streets were lined with tall maple trees that turned fiery red and golden every autumn, and their two-story house sat quietly at the end of Willow Lane. It was a house full of memories, from the faded photographs hung on the walls to the creaky wooden floorboards in the hallway. Robert Johnson, the patriarch, was a man weathered by time but still full of quiet strength. His hands, calloused and strong from decades of fixing engines in his garage, told stories of endless hard work. Every morning, he woke up before dawn, brewed a cup of black coffee, and read the newspaper on the porch while the world around him slowly came alive. His wife, Linda, was the heart of the home, gentle, nurturing, and the glue that kept everyone together. She woke later, humming softly in the kitchen as she prepared breakfast, the smell of freshly brewed coffee mingling with toasted bread and sizzling bacon. Their 3 children, Michael, David, and Sarah, had grown up under the steady guidance of their parents, their lives intertwined like the roots of an old oak tree. Michael, the eldest, was the responsible one. Ever since he was a boy, he took his role seriously, helping with chores, caring for his younger siblings, and promising his parents he would make them proud. He now worked as a software engineer in Chicago but never missed a Sunday visit home. David, the middle child, had a compassionate soul. His work as a nurse suited him perfectly. He was the one who always knew how to comfort a hurt heart or nurse a broken spirit. Sarah, the youngest, was a high school teacher, fiery and passionate, always advocating for her students and family alike. Despite their adult lives pulling them in different directions, the siblings made it a point to stay connected. Family dinners were a sacred tradition, a time when all screens were put away, voices raised in laughter and stories shared around the table. Birthdays were celebrated with homemade cakes baked by Linda, who never missed the chance to make her children feel special. Holidays were marked with trips to the nearby lake or cozy gatherings in the living room, where the fireplace crackled and everyone felt safe. One chilly autumn evening, the family gathered in the living room. The golden light from the fireplace danced on their faces as Michael recounted a humorous mishap at work that had his colleagues in stitches. David shared a touching story about a patient he had helped recover after a serious illness, and Sarah spoke passionately about a student who had just been accepted to college despite overwhelming odds. Robert and Linda listened, pride shining in their eyes. The house was filled with warmth, the kind that could only come from shared love, years of memories, and the unspoken understanding that no matter what life threw their way, they would face it together. Michael glanced at his siblings and smiled. "You know, no matter how busy we get, this is what matters most." David nodded in agreement. "Family first always." Sarah chimed in, her voice firm yet tender, "We've been through so much already. There's nothing we can't handle if we stick together." Robert raised his cup of coffee. "To family. To love. To always being there for one another." Glasses clinked softly in the flickering firelight. It was a late Sunday afternoon when Michael's phone rang. The familiar ringtone was nothing unusual, but the voice on the other end would change everything. "Michael, it's Dad," came Robert's voice, trembling and weak, far from the strong, steady tone he'd always had. The faint sounds of hospital machines beeped softly in the background. Michael sat down abruptly, heart pounding. "Dad? What's wrong? Are you okay?" There was a long pause, filled only with the steady beep of the monitor. Then Robert's voice broke the silence. "They found something. The doctors, they say it's liver cancer. Advanced stage. I don't have much time." Michael's breath caught. The words seemed unreal, like a bad dream he couldn't wake from. "Cancer? Dad, how? Are you sure? What about treatment?" "I'm starting chemotherapy tomorrow. It's going to be tough, Booty. Need you and your siblings to know. I didn't want to scare you before." Tears welled up in Michael's eyes, blurring his vision. The strong man he looked up to all his life was suddenly fragile, facing a grim battle. "We'll get through this, Dad. We promise." After hanging up, Michael's mind was a whirlwind. He called David immediately, his voice barely steady as he shared the news. "Cancer. It's bad, David. He's scared." David's voice cracked. I'm on me way home. We'll figure this out together. Sarah got the call next. Her usual fiery confidence melted into silent tears as she listened, overwhelmed by the gravity of the news. That night, the three siblings sat together in their childhood home, the walls echoing memories now shadowed by fear. David finally broke the silence. We can't lose him. We have to do everything to help. Sarah nodded, wiping her tears. No matter what it takes. Michael clasped their hands tightly. We're family. We fight this as one. The pain of the diagnosis was crushing, but the siblings' resolve was unbreakable. They promised to stand by their father's side, no matter the cost. Each felt a unique ache, Michael's fear of losing his hero, David's anguish as a nurse confronting his father's mortality, Sarah's heart-wrenching as the youngest who always looked up to her dad. The following days were a blur of hospital visits, doctors' consultations, and endless phone calls. The siblings coordinated schedules to be with their father, sharing hope and dread in equal measure. In quiet moments alone, Michael stared at old family photos, clinging to memories of laughter and warmth. David, in the hospital corridors, silently prayed for a miracle. Sarah wrote letters she never sent, pouring out her fears and love. Their family, once filled with carefree joy, now held tightly to a fragile hope that love would be enough to carry them through the darkest days. The weight of their father's diagnosis pressed heavily on the siblings, but it also sparked a fierce determination to fight back. In the days that followed the shattering call, Michael, David, and Sarah found themselves locked in countless conversations, phone calls, texts, video chats, all focused on one urgent mission: securing the funds for Robert's chemotherapy. It was during a late-night call that the three siblings sat down, virtually, miles apart but connected by a single purpose. Michael opened the conversation, his voice steady but eyes weary. We have to start figuring out the cost. Chemotherapy isn't cheap. The hospital gave us an estimate, over $80,000 just for the first round. David exhaled deeply. Insurance might cover some, but with Dad's age and the advanced stage, they might deny coverage on parts. We can't count on just that. Sarah's voice cracked with emotion. I don't know how we're going to pull that much together so fast. I barely have savings from my teaching job. Michael rubbed his tired eyes. I'll tap into my 401k. It's not ideal, but Dad needs this. We owe him that much. David added quietly, I can ask for an advance on my paycheck and maybe borrow from my sister's family. They've always been willing to help. Sarah bit her lip, determined. I'll start fundraising online, reach out to my community. Maybe some of my students' parents can help, even if it's a little. The plan was forming, fragile but real. They each pledged what they could, each sacrifice a testament to their love and desperation. Michael sat alone in his small Chicago apartment, staring at his retirement account balance on the laptop screen. The numbers looked small against the looming medical bills, but he knew every dollar counted. He drafted an email to his boss requesting an early withdrawal and swallowed his pride with each word. In Cleveland, David balanced long shifts at the hospital, often skipping meals or cutting breaks short. He spent quiet moments after work making calls to relatives, trying to negotiate loans or borrow money. His nursing scrubs hung heavy on his exhausted frame, a visible mark of his sacrifice. Sarah, back in their hometown, woke up before dawn most mornings. She juggled lesson plans, parent meetings, and a growing online fundraising campaign she'd started on social media. Messages of support trickled in, but the financial gap remained daunting. Still, every encouraging comment fueled her resolve. The siblings also faced personal sacrifices beyond money. Michael canceled a planned vacation, knowing the funds were better spent elsewhere. David postponed a professional certification course he'd been preparing for. Sarah declined invitations to social gatherings, focusing solely on the family crisis. Phone calls became a lifeline. Each evening, no matter how tired, they gathered for a virtual meeting. Updates on funds raised, hospital appointments, and emotional check-ins filled the calls. One evening, Sarah's voice trembled, I'm scared. What if it's not enough? Michael responded firmly, we're not giving up. Dad's counting on us. David added, "We'll do whatever it takes, even if it means everything we have." As the financial pieces slowly came together, the reality of the upcoming hospital stay hit hard. The siblings met in their childhood home for a brief weekend reunion, faces lined with fatigue but eyes filled with unspoken understanding. Linda prepared a modest dinner, trying to maintain normalcy despite the tension hanging in the air. Robert sat quietly, his usual vigor replaced by a fragile calm. Michael took his father's hand gently. "We've got this, Dad. We're ready to fight with you." Robert managed a faint smile. "I'm so proud of you all. No matter what happens, you've made me the happiest man." The night before admission, the house was heavy with both hope and dread. The siblings packed their father's bag together, carefully folding clothes and placing small comforts, his favorite book, a worn baseball cap, a framed family photo. Sarah lingered by the window, staring into the darkened street. Her thoughts raced, uncertainties, fears, and yet an unyielding hope that their sacrifices would be enough. Michael joined her, voice soft. "We're stronger than this disease." She nodded, fighting back tears. "For Dad, for us." The morning sunlight streamed softly through the curtains as the Johnson family awoke to a day that felt heavier than any before. The air in the house was thick with unspoken fears and whispered prayers. Today was the day Robert would be admitted to the hospital to begin chemotherapy. Michael arrived early, his suitcase packed with essentials and gifts for his father. His mind raced, replaying every conversation, every promise he had made. Walking through the familiar halls of his childhood home, memories flashed by, laughter-filled dinners, lessons learned from his father's steady hands, and the unshakable foundation of family that had always carried them. David came soon after, his nurse's bag slung over one shoulder, determination etched into his tired eyes. He checked the medical paperwork one last time, making sure every detail was in place. Even in this moment of uncertainty, he tried to remain the pillar of strength his father and siblings needed. Sarah, usually full of fiery energy, was quiet, almost fragile. She helped their mother pack snacks and comfort items for the hospital stay. Linda, with her hands trembling just slightly, folded a thick blanket Robert loved, a small shield against the cold stare off the hospital rooms. As the siblings gathered in the living room, the reality of what lay ahead hit them like a wave. Michael broke the silence, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "We don't know how long this will take, or what we'll face. But we're going to be there every step of the way." David nodded. "And make sure Dad gets the best care possible. And we'll watch over him together." Sarah wiped a tear. "We've sacrificed so much already. This is just the beginning." The car ride to the hospital was quiet except for the soft hum of the engine and the occasional breath from each occupant. Each sibling wrestled with their own fears. Would the treatment work? Would Robert's body withstand the brutal side effects? Would the family be strong enough to endure? Upon arrival, the sterile corridors of the hospital felt cold and intimidating. Nurses moved swiftly, machines beeped rhythmically, and the scent of antiseptic filled the air. Robert's face was pale but calm, his grip on each child's hand tight and reassuring. In the small hospital room, the family arranged Robert's belongings with care. The old baseball cap was perched on a chair, the family photo set on the bedside table. Linda held Robert's hand as the first nurse prepared the foreline. Michael whispered, "We're here, Dad. You're not alone." Robert smiled faintly, eyes shimmering with gratitude. "Thank you, all of you." As the first drip of chemotherapy medication slowly entered his veins, a mix of hope and dread settled over the room. The battle had officially begun. Outside the hospital, the siblings stepped into the cool evening air. The weight of uncertainty pressed on them, but intertwined with it was a fierce hope, hope born of love, sacrifice, and unyielding family bonds. Sarah looked up at the sky. "We'll get through this. We have to." Michael clasped her hand. "One day at a time." David exhaled slowly. "Together." Robert's hospital stay stretched longer than anyone had anticipated. Officially, the diagnosis was described to the family as a severe liver condition requiring intense treatment and monitoring. The doctors had emphasized the seriousness but framed it as a challenge that could be managed step by step. This was the explanation Robert chose to share with his children, softening the harsh reality to protect them, or so they thought. Each day, Michael, David, and Sarah took turns visiting their father, filling the sterile hospital room with their presence, their voices, their care. The hospital's rhythms became their new normal: morning rounds, blood tests, intravenous drips, and the hushed whispers of nurses passing by. Michael usually visited early, bringing coffee and newspapers to help keep their father's spirits lifted. David's shifts at the hospital made him especially attentive to Robert's medical needs. He checked vital signs, helped adjust pillows, and advocated quietly with doctors for better pain management. Sarah, with her warm heart, read aloud from books and news articles, her voice filling the quiet room with comfort. The siblings were careful not to reveal the full gravity of the illness to each other during these visits, fearing that the knowledge might shatter their fragile hopes. Instead, they shared smiles, small jokes, and memories, moments of normalcy amid the uncertainty. One afternoon, Michael sat by the window, watching leaves fall gently outside. Robert's hand found his. "Thank you for being here, son," his voice soft but earnest. "We're not going anywhere," Michael replied, squeezing his father's hand. "We'll get through this, together." Yet behind the smiles, behind the gentle reassurances, lay a quiet tension that none dared speak aloud. The siblings exchanged knowing glances in the hospital corridor. Was this treatment truly working? Was the battle as hopeful as Robert suggested? David once caught a nurse's concerned expression during a routine check and felt a pang of fear that he quickly pushed aside. He reminded himself to focus on the moment, to be strong for his father. Sarah stayed late one evening, her head resting on the hospital bed, whispering words of encouragement. "You're the strongest man I know, Dad. We love you." Despite the heavy atmosphere, there were moments of light: a shared laugh over an old family story, a surprising burst of appetite from Robert, a rare day when he sat up to watch a baseball game on TV. These fleeting joys were cherished anchors in a sea of uncertainty. But as days turned into weeks, the exhaustion began to show. Robert's body weakened, treatments took their toll, and the siblings found themselves battling their own fatigue, the emotional drain of endless waiting. They became a rotation, one at the bedside, one running errands, one managing work and home. Phone calls replaced in-person visits when schedules collided, but the bond held firm. Each visit was a delicate dance, offering hope without false promises, showing strength without hiding fear. Days blurred into nights. The hospital room, once a place of quiet healing, gradually transformed into a battleground of emotions. Michael, David, and Sarah found themselves caught in an exhausting cycle of hope and fear, celebration and sorrow. There were mornings when Robert's eyes would gleam with fleeting energy, when he would speak of better days, when the three siblings would laugh together over trivial memories or future plans. These moments were precious, a balm for the soul. But as chemotherapy sessions progressed, the side effects became undeniable. Robert grew weaker, the vibrant man they loved was now shadowed by fatigue and pain. His appetite dwindled, the sparkle in his eyes sometimes faded to a distant glaze. The family clung to every sign of resilience, every whisper of recovery. One afternoon, Sarah arrived to find her father asleep, his hand resting limply on the bedside. She gently touched his arm, fighting back tears. Whispering softly, she promised, "We're here, Dad. You're not alone." Michael arrived later that day, noting the pallor of his father's skin and the frailty in his voice. "You're fighting harder than anyone I know," he said, voice thick with emotion. "We'll be right here every step." David, despite his medical training, struggled to mask the heartbreak he felt seeing his father diminished by the treatment. After rounds, he would retreat to a quiet corner, sending silent prayers into the sterile air. Yet, amid the heaviness, the siblings remained pillars for one another. In whispered conversations after visiting hours, they shared fears they dared not voice in Robert's presence. "I'm scared he won't make it," Michael confessed one evening, the vulnerability raw. Sarah nodded, tears streaming. "But we have to believe." David added quietly, "It's the waiting that kills me. Not knowing what tomorrow will bring." The uncertainty gnawed at them. Every scan, every test was a cliffhanger. Each phone call from the doctor a mixture of cautious optimism and careful warnings. Despite Robert's choice to shield them from the full truth, the siblings sensed the shadow looming ever closer. But they clung to their promise, to fight together, to hold hope, even when the light seemed faint. It was a quiet Tuesday evening when David, scrolling through his social media feed during a rare moment of rest, stumbled upon something that made his breath catch and his heart slam against his ribs. Amid the usual posts from friends and news updates, a video appeared, one that immediately sent a chill down his spine. There, glowing in bright Hawaiian sunlight, was their father, Robert Johnson, relaxing on a pristine beach, the ocean waves crashing gently behind him. But what froze David in place was not just the sight of his father so carefree, it was the company. A young woman, laughing and radiant, sat close beside him. Her arm casually draped over his shoulder, their smiles broad and effortless. The caption below the video read, in bold, carefree script, "Life is meant to be enjoyed." David's hands trembled. He replayed the clip over and over, disbelief mixing with a surge of pain that felt like a physical blow. How could this be? Just weeks ago, they had been gathering funds, sacrificing everything to fight for Thisman's health, and here he was, basking in a tropical paradise with someone none of them had ever heard about. His mind reeled. The sacrifices, the hospital visits, the late-night calls, were they all lies? The shock rippled swiftly through the siblings when David shared the video in their private family chat. Michael was the first to respond. "What the hell is this? Is this real?" Sarah's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her breaths shallow. "I don't even know what to say." The messages flooded in, disbelief, anger, confusion, betrayal. How could Dad do this to us? After everything we've been through. I feel like I don't even know him anymore. The room where Michael sat felt stuffy. He stared at the screen as if trying to unsee what he had just witnessed. His mind raced through every hospital visit, every promise, every moment of hope. Were they all a facade? His chest tightened with a raw, burning rage, not just at his father, but at the deception that had stolen their trust. The emotional betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain. Tears welled up, blurring the video as he forced himself to keep watching. The laughter, the carefree happiness, it mocked the months of worry and sacrifice. Sarah paced her small apartment, phone clutched tightly in her hand. The betrayal felt like a betrayal of her soul. Her father, the man she'd adored and fought for, had hidden this from them all. Her heart hammered with a confusing mix of sadness and fury. How could he do this to us? To Mom? Her fingers trembled as she typed messages in the family group, searching for answers that would not come easily. David sat in the dim light of his living room, replaying the video again, trying to reconcile the image of the joyful man in Hawaii with the frail patient they'd tended to day after day. The weight of the deception pressed down on him. The sacrifices they'd made now felt like painful ghosts. Had typed a message to his siblings. "We need to confront him. This can't go unanswered." The decision to share the video with the entire family wasn't easy. It meant exposing a wound that some wished to keep hidden. But the truth demanded to be faced. Within minutes, the family chat exploded with messages, shock, anger, disbelief, a whirlwind of raw emotions laid bare. The family group chat buzzed incessantly, messages pouring in thick and fast. Some relatives expressed shock, others voiced anger. The siblings sat together, phones in hand, eyes glued to the screen. They knew the moment of reckoning was near. Michael, unable to contain his frustration, typed a direct message to their father. "Dad, we saw the video. Care to explain why you've been living a double life while we've been sacrificing everything for your treatment?" There was a long silence. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, a reply came. "Michael. It complicated. I wanted to protect you all from pain." Sarah's fingers trembled as she responded, "Protect us? By lying? By taking money under false pretenses?" David's message was blunt, "This isn't protection. It's betrayal. We deserve the truth." Robert's replies became sparse, evasive, then defensive. "I needed time to think. The hospital was suffocating. I wanted to feel alive, even if just for a little." The siblings exchanged looks, a mix of heartbreak and anger etched on their faces. Later that evening, they called their father, voices tense but trembling. "Dad, why didn't you tell us the truth? Why didn't you let us help you fully?" Sarah's voice cracked. Robert sighed deeply. "I was scared. Scared of being a burden. I didn't want you to see me like that. But we were here," Michael insisted. "We fought for you. We deserved honesty." The conversation spiraled, emotions boiling over, accusations, pleas, and raw SONF. By the end, the siblings felt shattered but resolute. They had uncovered a painful truth, but their commitment to their father remained. In the days that followed, the family grappled with complex emotions, anger, sorrow, disappointment, but also compassion. They promised to confront the situation together, seeking answers and, hopefully, healing. The news of Robert's secret trip to Hawaii had sent shockwaves through the Johnson family, but no one was more furious than Aunt Margaret, Robert's elder sister and a matriarchal figure who had always stood as the family's moral compass. Within days of seeing the video and learning the full extent of the deception, Margaret booked the earliest flight to Hawaii. She was a woman of formidable presence, her sharp eyes and commanding voice a mix of kindness and iron will. She wasn't one to stand idly by when injustice was at hand, especially not when it involved her own blood. Margaret arrived at the sun-soaked island with a storm raging inside her heart. The contrast between the tropical paradise and her heavy purpose was stark. The gentle crash of waves and the scent of salt in the air only heightened the tension. On the morning of the confrontation, the beach was bathed in golden light. Tourists lounged lazily under umbrellas, children's laughter mingled with the cries of seagulls, and palm trees swayed softly in the breeze. And there, unmistakably, was Robert. He sat casually on a beach chair, sunglasses shielding his eyes, the young woman from the video beside him, both radiating carefree smiles that stabbed like knives into Margaret's soul. Without hesitation, Margaret approached, her footsteps firm on the warm sand. Robert's smile faltered when he saw her, surprise, then unease flickered across his face. "Robert," she said, voice cold but steady. "We need to talk." The woman at his side looked confused but said nothing. The family tension exploded quickly. Margaret's words were sharp, cutting through the idyllic calm like a whip. "How could you do this to your children? To your family? To Linda?" Robert tried to respond, but his voice was shaky, evasive. I needed a break. I felt trapped." "Trapped?" Margaret's eyes blazed with fury. "You lied, robbed them of their trust and hope. While they sacrificed everything, you were here playing." The surrounding beachgoers slowed their pace, sensing the escalating drama. Then, the moment came that would be seared into everyone's memory. Margaret's hand shot out, connecting sharply with Robert's cheek, a resounding slap that echoed over the waves. Time seemed to freeze. The woman gasped. Robert's face flushed with a mixture of shock and shame. He did not resist. Margaret's voice softened, but her words were heavy with sorrow and disappointment. "This is not just about anger. It's about the betrayal of a lifetime. You owe them more than excuses." Robert lowered his gaze, the weight of his actions finally settling fully upon him. Margaret stood upright, her gaze never leaving Robert, filled with disappointment yet carrying a deep pain within. The sound of the waves crashing gently seemed to emphasize every word she spoke, every question like a knife cutting into the heart. "Robert, you have lived a lie in front of those who love you most. Your 3 children, your mother, our entire family placed their complete trust in you. And you? You chose to betray us like this?" Robert said nothing, only bowed his head in silence, his face showing clear shame and remorse. It was the most humiliating moment of his life, when all his pride and recklessness were suddenly crushed by the harsh look from his own sister. The young woman beside them watched silently, not fully understanding the story but feeling the heavy atmosphere that could not be erased. Margaret continued, her voice firmer now, no longer reproachful but challenging. "Now, if you still have any courage left, look straight into your 3 children's eyes, apologize to them, and take responsibility for what you've done. Don't let this pain become a wound that will never heal." Robert nodded slightly, his voice choked. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I don't deserve that love. Margaret sighed, raising her hand to slap him once more, but stopped. This is not the way to make things better. But at least, today you have faced the truth. All three stood silently, the sea waves lapping at their feet, the wind carrying away the heavy sighs of a broken family. The conversation ended in silence, leaving deep wounds in their hearts that only time could heal. The storm that had erupted on the sunlit beaches of Hawaii left ripples that spread far beyond the ocean's edge. When Margaret returned home, the Johnson family was no longer the same. The veil of trust that once enveloped them had been torn away, revealing raw wounds and difficult truths beneath. Back in Ohio, the siblings grappled with an array of emotions: betrayal, sadness, anger, but also a deep yearning for understanding. Michael found himself caught between his role as the eldest and his own shattered hopes. "I don't know how to look at him the same way anymore," he confessed one evening, voice heavy with exhaustion. "Everything we sacrificed, and this is how he repays us." David, ever the healer, struggled with a different pain, that of loving someone who had deceived them all. It's hard to hate him. But it's even harder to trust. Sarah's resolve was tinged with sorrow. "I want to forgive him, but the betrayal cuts too deep. How do we move forward when the foundation crumbles?" Their mother, Linda, carried her own burden silently. She oscillated between protecting her children and confronting her husband's choices. Family dinners, once filled with warmth, were now laced with tension and guarded words. The siblings debated fiercely over how to proceed. Some advocated for reconciliation, believing the love they shared could overcome even this. Others felt the need for distance, to protect themselves from further pain. Michael suggested family counseling, David proposed setting clear boundaries, Sarah sought solace in small acts of kindness, hoping to rebuild trust slowly. But underneath it all was an unspoken truth, that the scars ran deep, and healing would require time and effort from everyone.